everyone! So somebody asked me if I could do a really quick everyday makeup tutorial, so that's what I'm here doing today. So this is the look that I came up with. I got a couple of new things. So most of the products that I've been using, a lot of the palettes I have are limited edition, so they're not available anymore. So I tried this new, it's not new, it's new to me, but this Maybelline The Nudes palette. So that's what I used on my eyes. And I kind of like it. Not my favorite of all my palettes, but I have it and I like it and I probably will be using it. Yeah, this is sort of what I do every day when I do makeup on a daily basis. I don't wear makeup every day. It's just kind of a lot of work and I like to sleep in a lot, and if I don't do my makeup, I can sleep in another hour or so. So I don't do my makeup every day, but if I'm looking for something just kind of quick, simple, really understated, and I kind of go for this sort of look. So this is what I came up with. And if winged liner isn't your thing, you don't have to do this at all. You can smudge some like pencil eyeliner on your eyes and you'll still look good. So another thing I like about this eye look is that it's so like neutral and muted and understated that you can do any sort of lip you want with it. You can do sort of a more natural lip. I have this kind of bright corally pink color a little bit, but you can also do this with like a really deep red, or if you wanted to do a true nude. So it's really just mix and match. I think it's pretty simple. I think it's a very wearable look. So if you want to see how I did it, keep watching. Alright, so to begin with, I'm going to be priming my face with the Benefit Professional, and I like to focus this in the areas where I have a lot of pores, so around my nose and my cheeks, and I also like to put a heavy amount in areas that I know I have problems with my foundation cracking. So for me, that is my smile lines and also on my forehead, so I make sure that I really get a good primer in those areas, and it helps stop the foundation from breaking up on me. That is something that happens with almost every foundation I own, and I haven't found one that hasn't done that to me yet. So I'm just going to apply that in those areas, and then whatever's left on my fingers, I'm just going to spread all over my face. So for foundation today, I am going to be using the L'Oreal Infallible Pro Matte in the color 102 Shell Beige. Now when I'm going to be a little bit extra, I'll use two different shades on my face. So I'm just dotting that all over my face right now, and then I'm going to take a damp beauty sponge. The one that I am going to be using is from EcoTools, which I think personally is my favorite beauty sponge that I've tried so far. So when I'm being super extra, I will actually use two different shades of this foundation. I'll use 101 on the center of my face, on my nose and the tops of my cheekbones and my forehead and my chin, and it kind of adds a little bit of a more natural looking highlight and a contour, and then I'll use shade 102 on the lower half of my cheeks and on the outer perimeter of my face. So that's something that I do when I'm feeling a little bit extra, but I'm not doing that today. So I'm also not using a whole lot of foundation today because for a more natural, wearable, everyday look, you don't really want, super perfect, flawless skin. And right now I'm taking the Coty Airspun powder, and in the same areas that I have problems with my foundations cracking up on me, I am just liberally applying a lot of powder to those areas. I am baking my face. If you don't know what baking your face is, Google it. It started in the drag world and it made its way over to the beauty community. So I'm also going to bake under my eyes. I'm not going to use concealer today. So this is going to be kind of my extra brightening effect for the time being. So I'm just going to bake under my eyes, and it also will help to catch any fallout that may come from the shadows I'm using. So what am I doing now? Next I am taking, I can't actually find my regular eye primer. I moved about 4 times in the span of about 3 months, so a lot of my stuff is kind of all over the place. But I am taking the Maybelline Master Conceal Camouflaging Concealer in the shade 10 Fair, and I'm just taking a very, very tiny amount of that, and I'm dabbing that onto my eyelids, and I'm using that as my eyeshadow primer. So the good thing about everyday wearable makeup is you don't have to worry about everything looking flawless. You don't have to worry about covering up every single imperfection that you have, because that's not a very natural look. It doesn't look super wearable. And when you have, all of your flaws covered up, it usually means you have very, very thick makeup on, and it's going to be harder to wear. You're going to have to be way more conscious about sweating and accidentally rubbing up on things, and you know, not everybody is perfect, and you do have imperfections that you're going to need to deal with, and everybody has them, so you might as well embrace them, and you don't have to cover it up all the time. So for my eyes, I am taking the Maybelline The Nudes palette, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a Morphe E27, which is just a really big, fluffy blending brush, and I'm taking that and I'm applying the light transition shade that I pointed to all over my lids, just everywhere that there is a lid, from my lash line to my brow bone. I'm just applying that everywhere. And that particular shade is a very good nude color on me. It matches my skin tone very well. So I'm really just using that to set the concealer, and it's going to make it very easy to blend other shadows on top of later. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take the same Morphe E27 brush. I'm just going to dust whatever was left on my arm, and I'm going to pick up that sort of taupey, really neutral grayish brown kind of color, and I'm going to apply that liberally in my crease. So I'm going to really start at my crease, and I'm going to focus the color in the outer corners and slowly blend inwards and upwards, and that's going to create sort of a very natural shadow effect. These shadows are not the most pigmented that I've ever worked with, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, especially if you're first starting out with makeup. You don't want a whole lot of pigment. You want very light, very buildable color. You don't want a color that's so intense that if you make one wrong move, you ruin your whole look. So I do like these shadows for that purpose. It's very good for people who are just starting out with makeup, or, you know, haven't quite mastered everything yet. Because I admit I'm still learning. I still have things that I don't know, and I do like a really simple, easy to blend shadow that's very light. So the next thing that I am going to do is I'm going to take a Morphe E17 brush, which is very similar to the E27 that I was using. It's just basically a smaller blending crease brush. And I'm going to take a very dark shade of brown in the palette. Now this eyeshadow is a little bit more pigmented than the others, so you really don't need to dig as much in there as you do with the other ones. So I'm just going to kind of lightly tap, and then I'm going to apply this in my crease and in my outer corner, but I'm going to be very careful to keep it more in my crease and not blend it as far up as I did the other color, and I'm going to keep it more on my outer corner and more on my lid than to spread it out like I did with the other color. So using two different shadows, it just gives you a whole lot more definition, it gives you more dimension. So it's definitely not necessary. You could do this look with two shadows, but I like to be extra a little bit, and I think it does help to have that extra shade. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a flat shader brush. This one is from EcoTools, and I'm going to mix the two colors that I pointed to, and I'm going to put that on the inner 2/3 of my lid. So it's just going to have a very subtle brightening effect to the eye. It's going to take away some of the darkness that may have accidentally gotten there from the brown shadows. So it's going to open up your eyes. It's going to make you look very youthful. It has a little bit of a 50s pin-up-y sort of feel to it, so I really like it. Next, I am taking the same E27 brush, and I'm just taking just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of that light brown taupey color, and I'm just going to blend the top of that light shade really quickly. So next, I'm going to take another flat shader brush. This one is also from EcoTools, and I'm going to take that very sparkly white shade in the palette, and I'm going to apply that as my brow bone highlight. Now, because I am so pale, this shade works for me. It might not work for you. You might have to go find a shade in another palette. But I'm going to use that as my brow bone highlight, and I'm also going to apply that on the inner corners of my eyes for my inner corner highlight. It's going to open up the eyes. It's going to make them pop. And it's very subtle, which I like for my everyday looks. So next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take this smudge brush, which is half of a duo from EcoTools also. And I'm going to take that light brown taupey shade, and I'm going to very subtly apply this underneath my lower lash line. So for everyday, very wearable looks, you don't want to go too ham with putting shadows on the lower lash line. So this just gives you a little bit of definition without making you look like raccoon eyes. So now I'm going to be taking the NYX Matte Liquid Liner, And a lot of beauty YouTubers will speed through, or they won't show them doing their liner, but I just wanted to show this to you, just so you could see how I do it. And I really wish that I could say there was just one trick that you could do to automatically get your liquid liner perfect on the first try, and that just doesn't exist. I have a very strong dance background, so I started learning to do liquid liner when I was about 8 years old. So I have had years of practice. And when it comes to it, the only way that you really can get better at liquid liner is to just sit down in front of a mirror and force yourself to do it. Do it 3 times a day just before you get in the shower, and put it on, wipe it off, put it on, wipe it off, and then before you know it, you'll be fine. So a couple of things that I did learn that I want to pass on. When you're doing liquid liner, don't start with the wing, because you don't know how much liner is actually going to come off of the brush. So you're going to want to start somewhere in the middle of your eye where the line is starting to get thicker, so that if you have a whole lot of product on there, it's not going to be that big of a deal. And when you're doing the wing itself, a trick that I learned is to sort of try to follow the curve set by your bottom lash line. I'm still kind of struggling with this because it does change a little bit based on the angle. So you can see here, my liner was very uneven, so I took a very small EcoTools brush. I just very lightly wiped it on a makeup wipe to get a little bit of remover on it. Took the outer portion of that wing off and just used my finger to smudge some of the eyeshadow on it. And I tried to fix that line to make it a little bit more symmetrical. Next, I'm going to take the mascara of the moment, which is the Voluminous Lash Paradise by, who is this, L'Oreal? Yeah, L'Oreal. Everyone and their mother is using this right now. They adore it. And so I'm just speeding through this because mascara is mascara. But whenever you're doing your top mascara, always remember to tilt your head back so that you're less likely to brush the wand against your eyelid and ruin the eyeshadow look you just made. So I'm going to let the top dry for a little bit before I move on to the bottom. So I am taking the Benefits Goof Proof Brow Pencil in number 4. And you don't, when you're doing everyday wearable makeup, you don't necessarily want the super sharp defined Instagram eyebrows, because it looks really fake. And if that's your thing, go for it. But I don't think it's really very wearable. I don't think it looks very natural. And I think it can be a little intimidating to do. And it's complicated and it takes a long time. So basically I just fill in any gaps that I have and I brush through with the spoolie to blend everything. And I try to knock off any powder or foundation that got on my brows when I was putting it on. So now I'm doing my lower lashes. And when you do your lower lashes, remember to tilt your face forward. So when you're doing your upper lashes, tilt back. When you're doing your lower lashes, tilt forward. So next I am going to be taking just a big EcoTools powder brush, and I am brushing off all of that translucent powder, all of that bake, all of that air spun. So I'm going to look significantly less crazy. Still a little weird. I don't know what my lighting's doing. I don't really know what my camera is doing. This is a brand new setup for me, so I'm still learning. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that same brush and the Maybelline Fit Me powder in the shade 120, and I'm just going to do a light dusting of that all over my face. So yeah, back to my lighting. It's not nearly that bright outside. It's actually been a very dark, rainy day, so I'm not entirely sure what's going on with my camera, but I'll figure it out and fix it later. So just lightly dust that powder all over my face. I am a very, very oily person. My skin gets so oily, so I have to use powder all over my face to set my foundation. If I don't, it just slides everywhere. It's a giant mess. But if your skin is a little bit drier, you might not need to. So I'm going to take this very tiny, very adorable little powder brush and this very tiny mini version of Benefits Hoola Bronzer. And I'm not going to do a really sharp, intense contour, so you'll notice me knocking a lot of that powder off. So I'm just going to suck in my cheeks and just very, very lightly and very subtly follow that line that the hollow creates. And I'm just going to carve out my cheekbone a little bit. So again, you know, it's a very natural, very wearable look. I don't want ridiculous contour. I don't want, you know, my cheekbones to stick out 3 feet. So I'm just going to very lightly blend that in, very lightly apply it. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm also going to apply a little bit to my temples and blend that up into my forehead. It's going to slim my forehead a little bit. It's going to add a little bit more dimension to my face. And when you add contour to your temples and underneath your cheekbone, it helps to emphasize your cheekbone a little bit. So it gives you a little bit more of a very feminine shape. So I'm also going to very lightly put bronzer along my jawline, along my chin. And you can't see what I'm doing here too well, but I'm also emphasizing the back of my jaw. So now I'm going to take an EcoTools blush brush. This one is one of the first makeup brushes I ever bought. And the Milani Baked Blush in the shade Luminoso. So again, I'm just going to swirl into that, tap off some excess, and just very lightly apply the blush. So I don't like wearing highlight because I am so oily, and highlight just makes me look greasy and gross. So I like this blush because it has a little bit of illumination in it, but it's nothing too crazy, and it looks very natural. So for my lips, I am going to be using the NYX Soft Matte Lip Cream in the shade Zurich. I absolutely love these. They are my favorite. I think I own about 8 different shades. Sorry, I tried to find a good angle where I could see myself in the mirror and also have the camera pick up what I was doing. So that's kind of what I came up with. So yeah, I really love these lip creams. They stay on all day and they're matte and they don't feel bad on the lips. So yeah, there you go. So the last thing I am going to do after I put my lips on, I am going to take my Urban Decay De-Slick Makeup Setting Spray. I am going to give it a good shake, and then I'm going to spray liberally all over my face. That's going to take care of any powdery look from the many powders I put on. I'm just going to fan my face, and then if you're as extra as me, you likely have a hand fan lying around that you can just very, very fabulously fan yourself with. So here's the final look. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I think it is pretty simple and wearable, and you can definitely customize it. You don't have to use everything that I use. So yeah, I hope you liked it. Subscribe, send me suggestions if there are things that you want me to do, and I can probably make that happen. Bye!